David Lynch, I love the curveballs he throws, especially when he throws a rated G curveball at us. But on the flip side of a G, you.
Hi, I'm William Keck, the author of When You Step Upon a Star, and you're listening to the All Over the Place podcast, where the funsanity never ends.
Hello and welcome back to All Over the Place. I am your host, as always, Eric Porvoznik. And one more time, folks, I'm remembering right off the bat here, thank you so much, everybody, for continuing to like, share, subscribe. We grow because of you, and more great guests are coming on soon. But before we do that, we've got another threefer, and a threefer cannot be had without Mr. Jim Culver.
Hey, how are you?
Let me reframe. Obviously, Jim's going to be here all the time, but a movie threefer is a lot more exciting when we've got Captain Jim in the house. Unfortunately, Marty was not able to join us tonight, but he's here in spirit in this awesome threefer. Let's cut right to it. And of course, for this one, we're inspired. It's a bittersweet moment. We're inspired by the recent passing of David Lynch, a favorite filmmaker of mine since high school, actually middle school. I think I brought up on a previous show. I saw Eraserhead and then Elephant Man in a film appreciation class I took when I was in middle school. And I've been a fan ever since. I'm sure, Jim, you're a fan as well. I can't imagine you're not a fan of David Lynch.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, his style was very unique. There's really nothing like it, and it certainly wasn't to every taste, but he had a very unique voice and an incredible talent. There's really been nothing like his filmography, and his stuff will stand the test of time for sure.
Amen to that. And, thank you so much. And where transcendental meditator that he was, I'm sure he is maybe somewhere in this room. Who knows? But he's in all of our film memories, and just like Jim said, an amazing filmography. And let's cut right to it with our threefer. And Jim, we'll go with you to kick us off.
All right. Start off. Take a sip of my damn fine cup of coffee.
Nice.
It's part of my lifelong plan to emulate Dale Cooper. So for my number 3, I'm going to go with the 1984 version of Dune. A really, really spectacular version made by Mr. Lynch. Sometimes not always coherent. But
really true of any David Lynch movie. I mean, that's nothing special in that regard.
Well, I'm going to get more to that later, but most of the time that's true. He really captured the spirit of, I think, a lot of what Frank Herbert was trying to say. There's obviously, in movie buff land, there's always quibbles about what if Alejandro Jodorowsky had been able to do his version, and Lynch had gone off and done Return of the Jedi like he planned to. Who knows? In an alternate universe, maybe those are two really interesting movies. But I liked Lynch's version. Obviously, I grew up with it as an '80s kid. Love Kyle MacLachlan as the hero. Lynch's style really fit perfectly with so much of that story, especially his portrayal of the Harkonnens. They really had this really creepy industrial decadence about them. It fits the material perfectly. And I love Denis Villeneuve's version. And by the way, I apologize if I butcher any of these names. Yeah, his version of Dune has been spectacular. I really have enjoyed Dune and Dune 2 these last few years. But Lynch's version was really something special. There's a lot to enjoy about it. And personally, I like his take on writing the worms a lot more. Just the visual appeal of them, that you really feel like that these people are riding these gargantuan waves and harnessing this amazing power. It's really breathtaking, those scenes. I think Lynch captures the energy of that like nobody else could. Just all around really fun epic sci-fi movie that you just kind of gotta not always just appreciate it for more of a vibe rather than a straightforward story.
I could not agree with you more. I mean, I was 14 when that one came out, and I just read the book in a sci-fi class that I had the year before, and back when I read a lot. But no, I think everything you described, and I think he took and having have you seen Jodorowsky's Dune, the documentary about what he was going to do with it?
I've seen clips of it. I haven't seen the whole thing. but I did enough to get an idea of what he was working on.
And I think what he was going for, I think Lynch really captured a lot of what he wanted to do with it. And then certainly Villeneuve, I think I love Lynch's version. It was an honorable mention for me. And I love it, but I think that Villeneuve, just because they took a story that is best served. I like the miniseries that it was Sci-Fi Channel did the miniseries.
Back in the early 2000s, I think.
And so that did a great job. The book is just so all encompassing. It's just so layered. I mean, it lends itself more to that. And I think them splitting up Dune 1 and Dune 2, not necessarily played better, but like you said, Lynch captured that vibe. And I like it, 2.5 or like 215, 220, something like that. And I was a major Police fan. I still am a Police fan, but I think Sting was just fun in that role. He just chewed the scenery, and I got no problem with it.
Yeah, well, Sting was about as menacing as anybody in a metal thong could be.
Precisely. Well, I love that one. The honorable mention for me, great call. And but for my number 3, and you may have been able to figure out now, and no, this is not a nod to Dennis Hopper in Blue Velvet. Although, and just a very quick thing too, I've got the double album score from Angelo Badalamenti. I've got to give a shout out, music goon that I am. I love Badalamenti working with Lynch on so many movies. Always just captured exactly what Lynch went for, and I think they just made a great partnership. Much like Spielberg and John Williams melded together perfectly. Badalamenti and Lynch love the music together. But my outfit tonight, I'm leaning into, and yes, a lot more hair ago and a little less facial hair. The days I was coming in the 90s, I phased from people telling me I look like Alec Baldwin. It shifted into Bill Pullman, and I'm going with Lost Highway for my number 3. And just it was coming out of the O.J. Simpson murder trial, and Lynch and his writing partner. I'm blanking on the writing partner he worked on with that one, but he went with that someone taking on a new persona or potentially taking on a new persona. I can't remember the there's a medical term for it, but anyway, you start to take on a new persona in order to rationalize and explain away the evil that you've done. And I think they did a great job with that, with Bill Pullman's character, Fred, and then going into, just having the dream sequence and Lynch movies, just that fine line between reality, dream, and Lost Highway, such a great Mobius strip. And I think unlike any other Lynch movie, and I think another of his hallmarks, it's left so much interpretation. I mean, I could see a movie one way, you could see it a completely different way, and we're both right. And I love that about Lynch. And definitely Lost Highway. I mean, just Balthazar Getty playing the alter ego, or just the imagined, the dream version of Fred Pullman's character. And Robert Blake, creepy as all get out. Boy, how figure that one out. And Patricia Arquette just cementing her crown as the 90s version of Jennifer Jason Leigh, who took her clothes off in seemingly every movie in the 80s. Patricia Arquette took that crown in the 90s, and full display on very much full display in Lost Highway. But just a great Lynch movie. A lot of people were calling it at the time his greatest movie ever. And I don't necessarily agree with that. When we get to my number 1, you'll understand why. But Lost Highway, love it. And that's my number 3.
That might be his trippiest, or certainly one of his trippiest movies. It was really out there. But yeah, fantastic movie. So unsettling and creepy. That the scene with Robert Blake absolutely haunts my dreams. Just so creepy and unsettling. And of course, that was before Robert Blake got involved in his own stuff. But yeah, that absolutely creepy scene. And yeah, really interesting movie. Really liked Bill Pullman in that. Lynch had a tendency to find these actors that had this kind of old-fashioned Clark Kent, kind of wholesome, all-American wholesomeness about them, and then he put them in these crazy dark situations. And up until then, Bill Pullman was the nice guy. Yeah. He was Lone Star, or the guy from romantic comedies and all this stuff, Dr. Jameson, He was always like the kind of aw shucks nice guy, and so yeah, but Lynch put him into this just insane dark movie and this crazy journey, and he it makes it that much wilder seeing this guy go through that. It's one of my favorite things is when they do a good job casting against type, and it makes the story a lot more interesting, and not Pullman's last dance with the Lynches either, which I'll go into on my plus one.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely a good flick, good pick,
and a great soundtrack. In addition to Angelo Badalamenti doing the score, I mean, it was a who's who of '90s alt rock, and did Jumping Straight, 9 Inch Nails. Love that soundtrack.
Great stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. And now, Jim, we're going to go to your number 2 pick in our David Lynch Threefer.
My number 2 pick is, we'll say the only Oscar-winning movie that David Lynch and Mel Brooks worked together on, and that would be The Elephant Man. A lot of people don't know Mel Brooks produced that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, really just amazing movie. I actually didn't get around to seeing it until about 5-10 years ago. It was one of those that had been on my list forever, and I finally got to it, and man, oh man, it was so good. He's easily among his best work. Just a really, I don't know, just fascinating movie. The black and white and kind of this dreamlike atmosphere to tell this really kind of sad, tragic story about human nature and inhumanity and all these things. It really is a heartbreaking story, and it would be hard to take as just being told straight. But the way he tells it, just really gives it a fascinating feel. And it's I think honestly his most heartfelt movie, because you really the feeling of frustration from this character and the way he's treated really comes through the screen. I think it's really palpable, and you earn a lot of sympathy for him. This disfigured person and how he's treated by the world, that's a theme that Lynch didn't really play with a whole lot in his other movies, but I think it was really well done in that. And of course, John Hurt is amazing in it. And Anthony Hopkins as the doctor is fantastic. I think it's his only movie. I could be wrong about this, but I think it's his only movie not set in the States. But it really does push for some universal themes. I mean, it's just a really, really well done movie overall. And it's almost fascinating to look back on it after he made all these kind of weird surrealist movies, and it's really more of a straightforward story without a lot of the bells and whistles. Although he does give it some really interesting visual motifs and like I said, kind of a dreamlike atmosphere about everything that I think makes the raw emotion a little bit easier to take. But it is a very, very well done story.
Amen to that. And Jim, you have a knack for taking my honorable mentions tonight, so I'll just jump in and just second again everything you said. Especially John Hurt. I mean, I get so many actors. You think it's easy to play with a physical deformity, but he made it so human. And such a phenomenal acting job. And that, like you mentioned, Anthony Hopkins as well. And the only quibble I've got with you, I would say his most heartfelt story, Until a Straight Story, with Richard Farnsworth.
Fair enough.
But that's not on my. It's not an honorable mention. Well, I guess it's a side honorable mention, because David Lynch, one of those ones after all those it bookends between Elephant Man and A Straight Story. All these off the wall movies, and you just came out of nowhere, and as only David Lynch can make you can surprise you that way. But love Elephant Man. So for my second one, I am going to go really off the rails. This came out when I was in college, and Wild at Heart. And oh my God, you think Nicolas Cage knows how to play quirky characters? Everything pales in comparison to that. And he and Laura Dern just literally heated up the screen more ways than one. Isabella Rossellini, Harry Dean Stanton, Willem Dafoe. That movie, it's just like, it's, to me, that is just, I think, such a huge influence on True Romance and Natural Born Killers. Just the road story, people going, a couple basically bringing hell with them. And it's just one of those ones that grabbed me by the throat and did not let up from start to finish. And Lynch at his quirkiest. That's again, that's a crown that could be held by a lot of them. But I definitely just love the frenetic pace of Wild at Heart and all the. And yeah, I mean, people criticize Nicolas Cage for just being just so over the top, but damn it, it was meant to be. That movie was made for him, and he took every last second and ran with it.
Well, I mean, how can you not be over the top in a David Lynch movie? Number one. And number two, I'm pretty sure Willem Dafoe outdid him in going over the top.
Exactly.
Good Lord, that guy was such a creep in that movie. He makes the Green Goblin look like Mr. Rogers. He's so creepy in that. Like, ugh, And that's something that it's a common device in movies. If you have some characters that aren't good, but then you have one character who's horrible to make the rest of them look better. But he absolutely played it perfectly in that. Just this absolute creepy psycho. And honestly, I think Quentin Tarantino and Mr. Blonde owes a bit of a debt to him, because that to me feels like a similar character, just the ultimate psycho in a group of psychos.
Yeah,
but he was great in that. Yeah, Nicolas Cage was his usual wild man thing. And obviously, like you say, Cage gets a lot of heat, but I think honestly, when he's with the right director, he works just fine.
Yeah,
and he knows how to harness that energy for a good script and a good movie and a good director, and it works fine. But it was just when he started doing movies for the paycheck that people started to really notice that it didn't work in everything. But yeah, absolutely, he's great in this. Yeah, man, Nicolas Cage's run in the '80s is pretty incredible. I mean, from start to finish, he was fantastic in the '80s. But
actually, this would have been his first one in the '90s, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, that's right. It's a 1990 movie, isn't it? I forgot. I thought it was late '80s. But yeah, he's great in that. Laura Dern. Whew, yeah, just yeah.
A bit of a turn from her character in Blue Velvet, just a bit.
Just a little bit, yeah. And then she went right back to being that kind of character in Jurassic Park.
Right.
So,
and why am I blanking on her mother's name? Real life mother. Played her mother in the movie.
Right. Played the evil witch or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Is it Cheryl Ladd? Is that who it is?
There it is.
Cheryl Ladd. There we go. We got it.
We may just have fun with this little aside right now and run with that. So, folks, we eventually come to where we need to get on this one. We're all getting a little older, and things are just not coming to us as quickly. But we're going to quickly get to Jim's number 3 pick and any other honorable mentions he may have for our David Lynch Threefer.
Okay, the only honorable mention I'm going to say is Blue Velvet, which I do love. For some reason, I just gravitate more toward his more straightforward stories. I don't know why, but I think the more surreal they get, the less I get into them. Don't ask me why. I do enjoy them. Like I enjoy Mulholland Drive. I enjoy Blue Velvet for what they are. They just don't resonate with me the same way. But I do like both of those. So I'll consider both of those honorable mentions. But my number one. So you chided me for stealing your honorable mentions, but you stole my number one earlier. So my number one is The Straight Story. It's by far my favorite movie he did. I like almost all the movies he did, although I haven't seen Inland Empire yet. But so I'll get to that one at some point. But yeah, Straight Story, I absolutely love it. Came out of nowhere for me in the late '90s and blew me away. A G-rated David Lynch movie.
Yeah,
I believe made by Disney.
Yes,
and about a guy who rides a lawnmower, and it was amazing. It was so good. Like, I mean, first of all, Richard Farnsworth's performance is absolutely one for the ages. I mean, he did that performance knowing it was going to be his last, and he put so much heart and soul into it. And it's really kind of a beautiful story in its simplicity. It's just about a guy going to see his brother, an old man going to see his brother while he still has time too. But there's so much there that just can resonate with people. The importance of family, mortality, just going on a journey through, America's back roads. Lynch always had kind of a love affair in the Midwest and with America. And, this kind of feels like in some ways the culmination of it, because it's just this road trip that kind of shows day-to-day life, the day-to-day life that this old fella encounters on this trip, and just decent people trying to get from day to day, living their lives, not hurting anybody, no ugliness. That was a huge theme of his, the ugliness below the surface, but there was no ugliness in these people. These were just good, salt of the earth people, and that this fellow encountered. And it was just a beautiful story. It didn't have any villains, didn't have any pumped up drama. It was just it just felt like real life, and one good person, one flawed but good person, meeting a lot of other good people on a journey, and it was really beautifully done. And it's one of my all-time favorites. I love the straight story. It's really great, and he even included some of his actors from Twin Peaks in it, and just let them play normal people going through normal things, and it was really beautifully done. So.
And like Elephant Man, if I'm not mistaken, based on a true story, is it not?
Yes. Yeah. It was based on I think I'm trying to remember all that. They made a few small changes, but I think there was like a follow-up story where the brother eventually moved closer to him in their last years after that. So they had a relationship, which isn't covered in the movie, but it's kind of about how these two brothers kind of mend their fences, and another Harry Dean Stanton appearance, by the way, at the end.
Yep.
But really, really beautiful movie. I believe it's on Disney Plus now, so anybody that hasn't seen it, they can look it up on streaming. It's well worth it.
Absolutely. And I didn't talk that much about it earlier. It's almost like I knew you might come back to that. I just mentioned Farnsworth, but definitely a great movie. Again, David Lynch, I love the curveballs he throws, especially when he throws a rated G curveball at us. But on the flip side of a G, you fuck, I go with Blue Velvet as my number one. There's no ifs, ands, buts about that. That right there. I saw that when I was 16 when that came out. This was kind of, I'd seen Dune, of course, I was doing 2 years prior. So I was already a Lynch fan and not prepared one bit for everything that hit me on that screen coming off. And just the opening shots with McLaughlin's father, and just the imagery, like Jim said, the love affair that Lynch had with America and Americana, but then getting the underbelly of it, but it sets things up perfectly, and then just every evil turn, and even to the point where Kyle MacLachlan's character is like, why are there bad people? Why are there people like Frank Booth? And that's Dennis Hopper. Good Lord, how did he not win Best Supporting Actor? Well, I know because it was filth laden, but a quick aside and a tribute, a mini tribute within our tribute to Lynch. 1986 was the year of Dennis Hopper. Hoosiers, and I believe he got nominated for Hoosiers, did he not?
He did. He might have even won. I can't remember, but
I don't think. Well, again, I could be wrong, and we'll fix this in ombudsmaning ourselves later. But I think he was just nominated.
Yeah, he probably was. Yeah,
and he probably split the vote because with Frank Booth, and also he was great in a very small role in A River's Edge. So Dennis Hopper, 1986. But no, again, Isabella Rossellini and Kyle MacLachlan, Laura Dern. I mean, and the usual cast of characters. Brad Dourif plays one of Frank Booth's henchmen. And if I didn't bring it up on the SNL tribute show that we did a few months ago, one of the greatest sketches of all time in a very dismal year for the 85-86 season for SNL. But the sketch when Hopper hosted Frank Booth's "What's That Smell?" Frank, that's the exhaust of a 1974 Cadillac DeVille. And that's going to be pleather. That's not leather. No. John Lovitz. That's incredible. It's a scary honker you got there, man. But Frank Booth, the character of Frank Booth, amazing. And
can we give props to Victoria Jackson? Because she looked genuinely terrified of him in that sketch. It did not seem like she was acting in that.
What, Jim? You want me to go back and watch Frank Booth's "What's That Smell"?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
But no, again, but Blue Velvet, and just within all of the the darkest of underbellies of with this movie. It's a great detective story, and Kyle MacLachlan I think he just grew up. I mean, you talk about the switch from Laura Dern in this to Wild at Heart, going from Dune to Blue Velvet, and I that solidified MacLachlan's status. And I'm definitely glad he got to work one more time on Twin Peaks with David Lynch. And
No, absolutely.
Blue Velvet, genius movie, and just
and it did get. I mean, if I remember right, there was a lot of controversy when it came out because it was such a dark movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think Roger Ebert gave it 1 star, and I think a lot of other critics just didn't know what to make of it because it really is. It really is extreme in the way it kind of shows the light and the dark of American society. Yeah. You've got the kind of the Jimmy Stewart, aw shucks Americana, and then you've got then the dark is so dark. Like it's genuinely disturbing stuff that he doesn't cut away from. Like there's like the scene that brilliant scene with Dean Stockwell, where he picks up the light and he starts singing into it, and it just, that scene just goes on, and you can feel like Jeffrey's just discomfort and just wanting it to end, and it just goes on and on, but it's so beautiful, so brilliant.
Well, he wanted to go on his joyride with Frank. He just wanted to get to that.
Yep. Get himself a Heineken. I mean, Pabst Blue Ribbon. But, but I mean, it was just, he really pushed the extremes in that, and I mean, it was 1986, and, that kind of extreme content was not as common back then. It was certainly had been seen, but I think it was one of those movies, like Taxi Driver or one of those that really kind of pushed the limits of its darker scenes and made some people uncomfortable. And the actors obviously were, really gutsy to do everything they did and stick with that dark vision. But, so I think at the time, some people just didn't know what to make of it, but it's definitely stood the test of time as movies have generally gotten darker and more extreme and more willing to embrace kind of that surrealism and darkness that movie had. So I would say definitely ahead of its time.
And like the 16-year-old me jumped right into that. And a quick shout out to my friend Paul Keeler, who was the slightly more mature moviegoer than I was, even though it's just a year difference between us. Paul's a year older than I am. But we went to see that, and just both of us walked out of there. Holy shit. Wow, what did we just see? And let's go see it again. And we may have snuck back in. I don't know. I don't remember. Maybe not. But I definitely saw that at least 3 more times in the theater. It just got better every time. And, what are we? Almost 40 years later, I'm still watching that movie at least once or twice a year. So good. Mm-hmm. Not sure what that says about me, but I also like Natural Born Killers the more I watch it. So, that's me.
Well, I might differ with you on that one, but I'm with you on Blue Velvet. That's a great movie.
But speaking of Natural Born Killers, I brought it up earlier along with True Romance. Our +1 tonight is going to be a Lynchian film, but not done by David Lynch. And as much of a headache as I had coming up with my Threefer and the 2 honorable mentions, I had a harder time coming up with my favorite Lynchian movie. And I brought them up earlier, like I said, True Romance and Natural Born Killers. But I struggle with a few more than that. But that's me. Jim, we're going to start with you.
All right. So my pick is it's not a David Lynch movie, but it is a Lynch movie. And by that, I mean, it was made by Jennifer Lynch, his daughter. So she actually does have a pretty good resume herself. She made a movie, I believe, in the late 80s, early 90s called Boxing Helena, which obviously had some extreme content of its own and some controversy. The star of that, Julian Sands, passed away recently, R.I.P. But she definitely has kind of carved out her own niche doing some of these kind of dark, extreme independent movies. But she doesn't really dabble in the kind of surrealism that her father does. It's really more of just kind of straightforward, disturbing stories. But she is pretty adept at them, and she made a movie about 10 years ago, I think, called Surveillance. And we mentioned before Bill Pullman; he's the star of this as well. So it was kind of a chance for him to come back and work with the Lynches again. And he's the lead. Him and Julia Ormond are the co-leads of this. They play these FBI agents that are investigating a mass murder in this small town. There's this small town America again, but it's a I'm not going to give away because it's one of those movies that twists and turns, but it's very dark, it's very disturbing, but really well made, really creepy stuff. She has some really interesting stunt casting in that. French Stewart, Sherry O'Terry, both in that, both comedians playing some very serious roles, and both knocked them out of the park, by the way. And just the last 15, 20 minutes, especially, the whole thing is really disturbing. It does a really good job of kind of building up this, just this kind of ebb of unease, where you just know something really horrible is going to happen. You can tell from the tone of it. And then the last 15, 20 minutes, just kind of all hell breaks loose. And it's a really well done thriller. It's very dark, so you have to be into that, but it's really well done and really well acted. And I think she made her dad proud with this one. It was really good. And again, it didn't have his kind of surrealist touches that he was known for. But it was definitely a disturbing in a way that he would have appreciated.
And I'm embarrassed that when I was coming up with these plus ones, I did not think of Boxing Helena, which came out, that was 93 is when that came out. I remember I was in the theater in Pittsburgh at the time, and we were the artsy fartsy house because we weren't too far from Carnegie Mellon and University of Pittsburgh. So we played a lot of stuff that the college kids would come see. And I think we were the only theater in America that had that selling out every weekend.
Wow, that might be the only theater that ever sold out of that. With that movie.
Wow. And that said, we only had it for 2, maybe 3 weeks. But yeah, good call on that one, bringing that one up. And I hadn't realized that Julian Sands passed away. So there's another rest in peace within our rest in peace tribute to David Lynch. But great call. And I've never seen Surveillance, and especially like you said, coming off of Lost Highway with its, the video camera and just the capturing and the paranoia. I will definitely check out Surveillance. Well, no doubt. Good.
It's excellent. Where we're checking out.
Well, for my number one, or my number one plus one, just one more honorable mention within this, and it's really too easy because the Coen brothers are kind of like a mass appeal, David Lynch style, and Fargo without a doubt. I think that Lynch probably smiled the whole way through that one. But I'm going to go with a movie though that I think if David Lynch had ever directed a comedy. And I brought up my love affair with this movie maybe once or twice on All Over the Place, but Drop Dead Gorgeous. I think if he directed a comedy, it would be this one. Politically incorrect, and on the surface, it's about a beauty pageant and all the ugliness underneath it. And it takes place in a town called Mount Rose, Minnesota, and just beautiful road. You see the roses here, folks, in our backdrop, and the prickly thorns. Otherwise known as, Kirstie Alley, Denise Richards, nasty as all get out in that movie, and just it's messed up in all the right ways, and a great soundtrack as well.
I would say that for me that's a little closer to John Waters than David Lynch because it's got a little more camp to it, but I definitely see where you're going with that.
I'll go with that. If John Waters directed a script by David Lynch, or David Lynch directed a script by John Waters,
there you go.
I could go with that.
Yeah, that would work. Yeah, and that movie is funny as hell. I really enjoy that movie. It's really I think it kind of went under the radar when it came out, but it, because it wasn't high concept. It wasn't about a whole lot. It was just a fun time at the movies. But I got a kick out of it. It was hilarious.
Well, folks, again, sadly, we don't have Marty with us, but our tribute to David Lynch recently passed away, but left behind. As we barely scratched the surface on this one, and I'm glad we have some overlap with our honorable mentions. But you mentioned Inland Empire, Jim, and the Mulholland Drive. So many great movies from David Lynch, and thank you, a man from Montana. Can't get deep heartland there, north, the upper Midwest, that gets his schooling out in Pennsylvania, out in the Philadelphia area. And I love the fact that, he said he was surrealist to the nth degree, but his movies were paintings, moving paintings. That's exactly what he wanted them to be, and he captured that so well. David Lynch, cinema landscape is a lot better because of him. Thank you, David Lynch, for many, many great movies.
Indeed, it is. It's been about 20 years since he made his last movie, but he really had such a unique voice, and I feel like we're moving into a time when unique voices are a lot less common in the movie industry now. So he was fortunate to be working in the time he was, when he could get his visions on screen, and he absolutely delivered something that nobody else could have, and we've never seen anything like it, and probably never will again. So, kudos to you, sir.
Amen. Truth to that. And just very quickly, though, it's never going to be for some people it might, but you rarely hear about the concert film that he did with Duran Duran in the last 15 or so. You have 15. Well, we might be going 15, 20 years, but he did a phenomenal job with them, and not going to maybe reach the heights of one of your favorites, Stop Making Sense. But David Lynch worked great with musicians as well, and worked with Double D, Duran Duran, awesome concert film. I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but just Google David Lynch and Duran Duran. Check that one out before or after you watch Surveillance. Thank you so much. Remembering to like, share, and subscribe, and we will be back real soon with more guests and more Threefers for you and you and you.
Bye-bye.
All over the place, where the fun sanity never ends.